Osubya tini namba ina mugaso.
Ino mugaso ekuyamba ku registeringa no kumonitoringa business yo bwekola.
Amanya
Mtalema Robert.
Mtalema Robert. Wanokola wo mulimu kiwana.
Kale nkola mulimu wa mobile money.
Mobile money? Tini okimanyi?
Yes.
Tini kitegeeza ati.
Kale ebeera enamba eva muri URA yosura ngamba osasula musuru kubanga nange nko musuru.
Tini namba okimanyi?
Tini namba nkimanyi kubanjina kuba nina edduuka wane kampato oyinza kuba na dduuka notaba na tini namba.
Osubya tini namba ina mugaso ki?
Tini namba batugamba sometimes oba otambuddeko ebweru oba like okukakasa nti oli mutuuze era ow'omusolo to the country olina okuba ne tini namba ng'omuntu.
Tini namba ogimanyi?
Tini namba nkimanyi.
Tini namba ina mugaso ki?
Tini namba eyambako ng'oyagala osasula emisolo like URA oyagala okufuna number plate y'emoloka wetagisa tini namba oyagala okufuna driving license wetagisa tini namba ese.
Tini njimanyi.
Tini ina mugaso ki?
Waliwo tini ekikebe tini enamba.
Tini enamba?
Tini njimanyi kale obali recognized nti osasula omusolo gwo bulungi nti tebakuzibwaza mu bintu by'emisolo w'ebityo egambo basite mu bintu ebyokola.
Njagala kumanya tini kyeki?
Tini namba kwensasulira omusolo n'ekyekirala.
Gw'osubya zirina mugaso ki tini namba ezo?
Tini namba zinooza nga identification oba identifyingira omuntu oba ayina business oba ayina kyakola.
Tini namba okimanyi?
Tini namba nkimanyi.
Kitegeeza ki?
Tini namba kitegeeza bw'oba oyina tini namba katugambe oguze emotoka otumize emotoka kati bw'oba ogenda kusasula mu revenue olina okuba oyina tini namba kugamba esobole okubeera n'omumanya gwo.
Kyesubya tini namba tugiyize era tumanye omugaso gwayo. Atagimanya ayogedde byonna byoyogedde. Okay, kati fune answer etufu okuva ew'abakugu. Tini namba n'emigaso gya tini namba teweerabira Bro Hasa, a boy from Kiboga has been my name. Comedy Treats is where I come from. Don't forget, you can check there for more funny clips. And again, Balix, bebabadde ku nteekateeka y'okubanga kino ekintu kikutuukako wonna gye tutambulidde bane mukulikeyo big upon Faisal on camera and Faisal my main producer bonna bikwasaganyizza bane ndowooza tunaddamu mweraba.
Tini ye namba y'omusolo ekwawula ku muwi w'omusolo omulala era ng'ennamba eno esobola okuweebwa ng'omuntu sekinoomu individual oba ng'ekitongole katugeze olina ka business kakali eyo olina ekitongole ky'okoleramu kwegamba tugiwa omuntu sekinoomu n'omuntu atali sekinoomu era ennamba eno ebeera nnamba nga ya digiti 10 okugeza nga 1000 22 33 47 kwegamba ebeerako ennamba 10 era ng'ennamba eno ekwawula ku muwi w'omusolo omulala. Ate ekirala omuntu yandyagadde okumanya nti ekuyamba etya? Tini teyamba gavumenti yokka kukuŋŋaanya musolo okuva mu bantu oba ebitongole wabula naawe ng'omuntu ekuyamba okugeza ekuyambako okusasula omusolo ekyo nkyogedde ekuyambako nga osuubula ebintu okuva ebweru w'eggwanga ate n'okubitunda ebweru w'eggwanga okusobola okubikiriyalinga ne bibeera nga bisasula omusolo olina okuba ng'olina tini. Ekirala ekuyambako bw'oba ng'osaba ttenda mu gavumenti kubanga waliwo abamu ku ffe ababeera nga twagala okukolera gavumenti emirimu ekuwadde akalimu oba weetaaga okubeera ng'olina tini lwa nsonga ti omuntu gavumenti gwewe okolera emirimu oba ebitongole ebirala eby'enjawulo bikusaba okubeera ne kye tuyita tax clearance certificate ekukakasa nti ggwe wawandiisibwa era emisolo gyo gisasula bulungi. So tini ekuyambako mu nkola eyo. Ekirala okukyusa obwannannyini ku bidduka. Waliwo bannaffe abatunda emmotoka zaabwe nga baziguza abantu abalala kizibu nnyo okukyusa emmotoka ensangi zino nga tolina tini kubanga oyingira mu tini yo mwennyininyini n'ogiteekamu n'oteekamu ne password yo noba ng'osobola okukyusa emmotoka eyo kuba emmotoka kati twazikyusa zawandiisibwa ku system si bye biri ebyedda ng'olina ekipapula kyebbali n'obeera ng'okikyusa n'okizeewo omuntu omulala. So tini ya mugaso nnyo.
Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.
Acquiring a tin is now easier than ever before with a new interface that is brief, simple, and cuts out all the excess fields from previous applications. All you need is your national ID or driver's license or passports and internet access, and you're good to go. No more waiting in long queues, as you can now acquire a tin instantly from wherever you are. Remember, it's free. Experience our new and improved modern interface that is user-friendly.
Thank you for paying your taxes.
Uganda Revenue Authority. Developing Uganda together.
That's my little angel Rose. Together with millions of other children, my daughter Rose is assured of learning something new every day. Moses, my husband, just like many other commercial farmers, has his business supported so he can provide for us. When my other little one was on the way, even with my pregnancy complications, it was a quick, smooth ride to Mulago Specialized Women and Neonatal Hospital. Also, my new baby was able to make it through his first days with the help of specialized equipment thanks to the reliable electricity which has also been extended throughout the country. All this and more has been made possible because of you.
Join us and together let's do more for our country. Get your free tin instantly at www.ura.go.ug.
Thank you for paying your taxes.
Uganda Revenue Authority. Developing Uganda together.
In chess, the small one can become the big one. It's the same here. And here too. Watch every move. Record every number so you can plan better. No matter the size of your dream, tomorrow's success belongs to those who keep today's records clean. File your returns today.
Uganda Revenue Authority. Developing Uganda together. Uganda Revenue Authority. Developing Uganda together.
Wait, Abu. Tunamaliriza. And what are you doing throwing papers all over the place?
I'm looking for an invoice for a sound system and cables that I received yesterday, but I can't find it.
You know there is a way of keeping all this in one place and available to you as and when you need it.
I really wish there was one, because the way these invoices grow legs and disappear.
I believe this is what you're looking for.
Now how did it get there?
Tabo! Do you know that with EFRIS, you can stay on track of all your business transactions and improve on your record keeping?
How so?
Kati tuli ku computer with EFRIS. I just search using the fiscal document number and I retrieve the records I'm looking for. Bookkeeping becomes simple after that.
Kapo, awesome, yeah.
I began using URS Kakasa Solutions and now I'm in charge of my business. And you can as well.
Kakasa, be sure you are in charge of your business.
Uganda Revenue Authority. Developing Uganda together.
Our humble beginnings take place in September 1991 with an amalgamation of 3 different departments in the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. Back then, the economy was just getting back onto its feet. Tax collection stood at 6.83% of the GDP, amounting to 180 billion Uganda shillings in the financial year 1991-1992. The URA senior management team comprised of over 60% expatriate staff, and revenue collection depended majorly on cash-based systems. Over the years, we have developed more effective and automated means of revenue administrations, with 95% of URA's processes automated to mitigate corruption and position URA as a business enabler. Revenue collection has grown to 13% of GDP, amounting to 19.26 trillion Uganda shillings collected in the just concluded financial year 2020-2021. At 30 years old today, URA boasts of being an effective semi-autonomous body, providing revenue administration services, spanning the entire country and driving Uganda towards economic independence. We have a vision of mobilizing enough revenue to fund the national budget by 100%. We are 30 years stronger.
Uganda Revenue Authority. Developing Uganda together.
Beats none to me. She is a business owner that has just received a tax assessment from URA for not filing her tax return. She goes to her neighbor Nalongo to vent.
Nalongo, I'm frustrated. Can you imagine URA has issued me with a tax assessment simply because I did not file my tax return?
Oh no. To avoid such assessments, I file my tax return by the due date.
Due date? You mean there are deadlines for filing return?
Yes, they are there. And failure to file your tax return by the due date leads to URA issuing you a tax assessment.
But the amount of tax assessed does not even reflect my business performance. Why didn't URA first ask my business performance before assessing me?
You see, Nantome, URA gives you the opportunity to assess yourself by filing a return. If you fail to file your return by the due date, that is when URA comes in to issue you with a tax assessment.
Tell me more.
For income tax and rental income tax, both a provisional and a final tax return must be filed. For a provisional tax return, the due date is by the end of the 6th month of the taxpayer's year of income for a non-individual, and by the end of the 3rd month of the taxpayer's year of income for an individual. For a final tax return, the due date is by the end of the 6th month after the taxpayer's year of income for both individuals and non-individuals. For VAT, excise duty, withholding tax, and pay-as-you-earn returns, the due date is by the 15th day after the end of the tax period to which the return relates. For a lotteries and gaming return, the due date is every Wednesday of the following week and by the 15th day after each tax period. This information is also available on the URA portal at www.ura.go.ug under A to Z topics and on URA social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. Better to file your tax return on time.
Uganda Revenue Authority. Developing Uganda together.
Kapo, you seem to be in a hurry. Where are you going to?
I'm gonna pay URA a visit.
Why would anyone visit URA? Of all places?
To know more about the Kakasa business solutions, namely digital tracking solution, the voluntary disclosure program and electronic fiscal receipting, and invoicing solution, which have turned my business around. You know I need to be on top of my game to protect my empire. If you know, you know.
I too need to know what Kapo knows. Kakasa, be sure you are in charge of your business.
Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.
Acquiring a tin is now easier than ever before with a new interface that is brief, simple, and cuts out all the excess fields from previous applications. All you need is your national ID or driver's license or passports and internet access, and you're good to go. No more waiting in long queues, as you can now acquire a tin instantly from wherever you are. Remember, it's free. Experience our new and improved modern interface that is user-friendly.
Thank you for paying your taxes.
Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.
11:25, and we are coming to you live from the URA Tower, floor 12. Unlike how we do it normally, this particular episode of the Tax Mchuzi webinar is not coming through live from the Drift studio, but rather from another facility that we do have here at the tower. We thank you for tuning in, and we are saying today is a beautiful discussion because we are going to be breaking down two very vital sectors. One is the petroleum, or should we call it the oil and gas sector. Then the other one is the mining and extractive sectors, which are not new young sectors, if I may, because the story of oil and gas in Uganda goes as far back as a century ago, because the initial discoveries were made in the 1920s. Then in the 1980s, we saw proactive movements being made to start to tap into this sector, where we started to see contracts, pre-contracts being drafted. And in the 90s, we then see the mining oil and gas companies coming into the country, and they start to do seismic surveys to try to see if indeed we do have oil in Uganda. And guess what? In 2006, oil was confirmed to be present in Uganda, and the rest, as they say, is history. Now, we do have an oil and gas expert in the house, and he's none other than Godfrey Mchuzi, and he'll be breaking this down a little bit deeper for us, especially from the perspective of the taxman. We also do have a good friend of ours in studio with us, Mr. Ekojot Felix, and he will be breaking down for us the mining and extractive sector, because Uganda is increasingly becoming a powerful player in the mining exports, and he'll be able to break for us down exactly how all of this is shaping up. But first things first, I'm going to give them a minute to say hello to you, the viewer. Then after that, we shall dig deep into the difficult matters of the day that we have to discuss. Godfrey will go first. The viewers are watching, and they would like to say hello to you.
Thank you, Solomon. Good afternoon, viewers. I come here to give you some tax insights into the oil and gas sector. And I am excited to see that you are also watching this. I hope that by the end of this webinar, we'll have picked a few things that concern the taxation of the petroleum sector. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Godfrey, for making the time and for coming to share with the viewing Ugandans. Felix, this is your moment to say hello to the viewers before we can dive in.
Yes, good morning, our dear viewers, taxpayers, and everyone out there. As Solomon said, my name is Felix Ekojot. We work with the Petroleum and Mining Division of Uganda, of the Domestic Taxes Department. And basically today we shall be discussing and knowing much more about the mining industry in Uganda, and mining and the petroleum and the extractive sector in Uganda. Wish you fruitful listening and watching.
Awesome, awesome. Felix has wished you enjoyment as you learn. Indeed, this is the philosophy that is behind URA TV and this particular show, where we get to break down everything to do with domestic taxes in Uganda. And yeah, like they've made it very clear, the two sectors that we are looking at quite critically today is the sector of oil and gas, or should we call it the petroleum, and the sector of mining and other extractives. Godfrey, the viewers are watching and they want to know, what is the current status of the oil and gas sector? Why should Ugandans be excited about the possibilities in that space?
Yeah, thank you so much for that interesting question. And to begin with, in oil and gas, we need to manage expectation.
Yes.
We need to manage expectation. You have given a very good preamble and history about oil and gas, dating way back a century ago. But it is important for every person viewing there to understand where we stand as Uganda in terms of the oil and gas sector. If you've been looking at newspapers and the news in the media, you are aware that Uganda took final investment decision, which is normally called FID, in Feb this year. What is final investment decision? What does it mean? It means that the companies that are investing in the oil and gas this time around, they are saying we are ready. We have the money. We are now going to invest to be able to get out the oil out of the ground. This oil has been in the ground for so many years, so many centuries, but it has not been useful to Ugandans. But the companies are saying now we have the money and we're going to get the oil out of the ground. So that is very, very important as far as the sector is concerned. We can now say that according to information from the companies and according to the information from the ministry, which is the Ministry of Energy, we are going to get this oil out of the ground by March 2025. So that's why we still have a few things to do now, here and there. But 2025, March is not very, very far. But if you look at the sector, the way it is moving now, the current status, Uganda has had a successful oil and gas discovery. We have been able to have 21 oil discoveries. And from 2006, we are able to discover that we have 6.5 billion barrels of oil in place. But is that oil, all of it, recoverable? No. Considering the current technology, the current economics that we have, we can only recover 1.4 to 1.7 billion barrels of oil. And that one is projected to take us for the next 25 years. But again, when we look at the basins that have hydrocarbons, Uganda has only explored only 10% of that. That means 90% of our oil prospective basins are not yet explored. So Uganda still has a lot of potential into the oil and gas. You can imagine if we are talking about the 1.4 billion barrels of oil recoverable, can take us for 25 years. So if we make more discoveries from the 90% that is not yet discovered, it means Uganda will be one time maybe put amongst the OPEC countries that produce oil and gas. But important to note, Mr. Moderator, today is that the industry now is undertaking development. The development of the facilities, the development of infrastructure, the development of other supporting infrastructure to make sure that the oil comes out of the ground. The phase for exploration ended. Now we are under development, and we are saying very soon come in the next 2-3 years, that phase is going to be completed. Companies have already signed contracts. I can attest that almost contracts awarded. When you look at the upstream, about $4 billion have been awarded in terms of contracts. And these contracts have been awarded to local companies, others to foreign companies. And this is a very, very important information for everyone viewing, because now it means as the companies spend, what I know in taxation is that if you are spending, someone is earning. And therefore, those companies that are earning those monies that are being spent are going to be paying taxes. So we should be able to see the oil and gas sector starting now to contribute some significant portions of revenues monthly coming in, especially from transaction taxes, like pay as you earn, from withholding tax, we should be able to see those monies coming in because the contracts have been signed and the projects have taken off.
Thank you so much for painting us that beautiful picture of the oil and gas potential that is almost no longer just potential, because come 2025, with the first drop coming through, we shall then be able to make the most of this beautiful opportunity that nature blessed us with. But on this side, we do have Felix.
Okay.
And Felix is talking about a different set of opportunities that are also within our ground. And that is none other than the mining and other extractives. Mining and other extractives are English words. If you can bring it to context and you help us understand exactly what that means, what does the phrase mean?
Thank you very much, moderator. Mining, as defined by the Constitution of Uganda, the Constitution of Uganda gives the powers, mandates the government of Uganda to hold the natural resources, especially that coming from mining, for the benefit of the people of Uganda. So mining, as defined by the Constitution, is any substance that is occurring naturally, either in or above the earth's surface, that is formed as a result of a geological process, except petroleum. So petroleum is also one of the other substances that is formed out of geological processes, but then anything except that is mining, is a mineral, is a mineral. So mining in Uganda, just like Godfrey has said, petroleum is something that has been there for over a century. From the 1920s, that is when the processes of geological surveys started in Uganda to discover, to establish what kind of resources we have in this country. And indeed, from around the 1980s, mining or minerals formed the significant part or contributed so significantly to our GDP. That dropped a little given the political issues that we had in the 1970s. But later on, I think from the 90s, there has been efforts by government to revive the sector. Uganda is endowed by numerous minerals spread all over the country, and the government has done made significant efforts to establish, to surveys, to establish where these minerals are found. Wherever you go in Uganda, whether it is from the west, from the east, from the north, from the central, there are significant deposits of minerals. And if you have been following a newspaper or radio media updates, you have been hearing about the gold in Busia. You have been hearing about the rare earth mineral discoveries in Iganga, Bujiri area. We have been hearing about the iron ore in Kabale. We have been hearing about the gold issues in Kasanda, Karamoja, and other parts of Uganda. So there are very lot of minerals, metallic, industrial, and the others. So Uganda is endowed with those very many minerals. Currently, the mineral sector is regulated by the Directorate of Geological Surveys and Mines of the Ministry of Energy, and they are charged with ensuring that everyone who is in the sector does the right thing. So they are charged with giving licenses. So we have different licenses that have been given by the department across the country. We have what in mining we have what is called prospecting. Prospecting is going out there to scan where there are minerals. A miner is required to obtain a license to do that prospecting. We have over 300 licenses that is issued to people who do explorations. Exploration is going to the details of the mineral to find out the economic viability. And then we have the other, which is the mining lease, is given to give permission to an investor to extract the minerals. And then we have location license. Location license is also given to an investor to extract. but then it is given for investors who are going to spend minimum capital investment effort to try and transform the sector. Recently, we've had a change in the law. We had the Mining Act 2003. Recently, Parliament passed the Minerals and Mining Act 2021. I know it is with the President for assent. Once that is assented, the different challenges that we've been facing in the sector will be solved. But also, the other thing is for our listeners, for our viewers, is that the biggest challenge that was in the sector was as in artisanal miners, which this recent law is trying to solve. So once it comes in place, we should be able to fully benefit from our minerals as a country, and should be able to contribute significantly to our revenue collection, especially as Uganda Revenue Authority.
Thank you so much. Just for the benefit of our viewers, if I can interject, the word artisanal miners, if you can break it down for them so that they get to appreciate who this category is.
Now, artisanal miners are people who use rudimentary tools. Now, because they use rudimentary tools, sometimes they go into these activities without being permitted to do so, without having a license. Let's say an example of gold. Having identified that there is gold, say in Nakawa, for them, because they can carry their shovels, hoes, and these other rudimentary tools, they can just go and start excavating. Those people are called artisanal miners. But it is a problem to management of the sector because they are usually very many. You cannot regulate them. Everyone wakes up from where they wake up every morning, goes and tries to pick what they can pick from the endowment that we have as a country. Now, government has come in to ensure that they are regulated by the recent law provides for them to form at least groups and register as groups so that they can be identified and helped. The other thing is that being an artisanal miner, because they are not regulated, it is very hard for government to help them. Government has a lot of provision support, incentives to support the mining sector. So it was very hard to government to support the artisanal miners because of how disorganized and informal they are in their operations. Yes.
Then it also exposes them to health risks.
Health risks. There have been a lot of safety issues, deaths, people dying buried in the mine pits, and that is what the government is trying to avoid. Once they are regulated, government is able to guide them on the right mining guidelines.
Thank you so much, Felix. You've really broken down the sector, even when it came to the rules and regulations, the laws that are governing the sector. And I just want to fly right back to our friend in the oil and gas, so that he is able to also share now the legalities around oil and gas, because initially he had talked about the opportunity, the evolution, and these companies and their readiness, and what they are doing right now in the development phase as we run up to the first drop. What are the laws that are governing the sector? From two perspectives, you're going to break down the laws that are governing the sector, then also you'll hint on the laws that are going to help Uganda make the most of the sector by way of revenues.
Yeah, thank you so much. That is a very, very important aspect in the management of oil and gas. The viewers there should note that at least one of the highly regulated sectors in this country is the oil and gas. Oil and gas is highly regulated, and you must comply with the existing laws and regulations and other administrative procedures that have been provided. To begin with, how does the regulation start? We have existing laws, for example, that govern the policies, the regulations, and other issues that relate to the oil and gas. We have, like in the oil and gas, we have the upstream law that manages the activities that are happening in the exploration, development, and production. That is a law that is existing. It is called the Petroleum Production, Exploration, Development and Production Law of 2013. It is the Ministry of Energy that is mandated to administer that. Of course, other agencies in the Ghanaian government pick some other aspects that they need to do. We have, and there are also regulations there.
Yes.
That guide on how such law should be implemented. We have another law which is the conversion, the midstream law. Which talks about conversion storage, and it is also of 2013, and that one guides the midstream. Now, we are using these words, but upstream.
Please, because I was about to ask that.
Yeah, upstream in the oil and gas, we are referring to the activities that relate to the exploration of the oil, that is crude oil, the development of the crude oil, the production of crude oil, and the decommissioning of those activities and facilities when the oil has come to a stop. That's what they call upstream. Now, when you get this oil out of the ground, it has to be taken to the refinery. Uganda, we are intending to build a refinery very soon, and that refinery is going to first have a capacity of 30,000 barrels per day. Then it will be upgraded to 60,000 barrels per day. We want to be able to utilize this oil to be able to also produce the white products. White products, I mean the petrol you put in your car, the kerosene, and the diesel that we use in our vehicles.
The oil products that we interact with on a daily basis.
Those are the white products. The crude oil we get cannot be put in the car direct, so it has to go through the refinery. If that oil is not refined, then it has to be transported to other external markets. Therefore, we need a regulation that does that. In Uganda, we intended to build a pipeline right away from Hoima to Tanga. So, using that route, it's about 1,444 kilometers. It is going to be one of the longest heated pipeline in the world to transport the crude, because our crude is waxy. That is just giving some properties of our crude, but we are talking about the regulations that govern. Okay. Recently, we have seen the ECOP bill and the ECOP Special Provisions Act assented to by the President, that gives that operationalizes some of the agreements that were entered into when these oil and gas processes were being taken. Now this one takes me to talk about the agreements.
Yes.
The agreements, in the oil and gas, you cannot avoid to have the agreements. But you know, as we all know, agreements are not laws. They are, yes, they guide the contractual relationships between the two parties, but we need to do it in the context of the law. So
they govern association,
yes,
the relationship.
So in the oil and gas, we have also agreements. And one of the key agreements that we have there is called the Production Sharing Agreement, simply called the PSA. Now, the PSA is an agreement that governs, that gives contractual arrangements between the government and the oil company. How is this oil going to be explored? What kind of programs need to be explored? How long will be exploration phase? How long will be the second exploration phase? How will the production be done? How will be the sharing be if the oil is found? How shall we share the barrel of oil that comes out? So you can see there are contracts, there are laws, but also there are other tax laws. Now, we have a number of tax laws. The oil companies, when we talk of oil companies now, we are talking about those that are doing the exploration, development, and production.
Yes.
But those ones, like any other taxpayer, they are taxpayers. Therefore, they have to be subjected to the existing tax laws
within the country.
Within the country. But as you can see, the existing tax laws, because of this sector being unique. Unique how? So there are some companies that came here in early 2000. Up to now, they have been spending, but they have not earned any revenue. So you can imagine all that time of waiting. The oil, the revenues depend on the price of the oil. The price of oil has been fluctuating. I remember I remember in 2013, it was above $100 per barrel. 2016 there, it dropped even to 40 or to 30 barrels per barrel. Now it has gone up again. So you can see how fragile or how you can make a loss, how you can make money in the oil and gas sector. Therefore, it is a sector that requires a bit of proper
meticulous tax regime.
Now, we have tried as Uganda to make sure we make some special provisions in the existing tax laws, to make sure that we make special provisions for the oil and gas sector. For example, if you look at the income tax, which is the one for income taxation, there is a special provision within the income tax where they say an oil and gas company will be taxed in accordance with the income tax, but subject to special provisions in that part. We have a part here in the income tax called Part 9A, which before you go into the taxation, you need to understand, because it is taxed in accordance with that law, but subject to the provisions in that act. So that means there are some modifications, some policies, provisions that speak to the oil and gas companies. Others just to run through, still the VAT Act will apply. You will see there are some sections of the VAT Act that have been amended to provide for the deeming provision. That is also very critical. I think the viewers there would be, some of them would ask about deeming, because in many conferences areas we have moved, it has been a hot cake.
We are going to dig a little deeper into it when we are talking deeming incentives.
Yes, we have the issue of other laws, the East African Custom Management Act. There are other provisions there that speak to the oil and gas sector specifically. For example, I know there are exemptions on those imports. We shall talk about it when we are looking at incentives, like you've said. There are other laws that I've already talked about, the ECOP Act, special provisions that regulates or provides for how someone dealing in the midstream, especially in the pipeline, will be taxed. We have the refinery coming on board. Yesterday I represented URA in the meeting of top management at finance. The refinery is coming on board. We don't know whether the companies will also ask for special provisions, but I think if they are justified, we shall see how it should be managed. So all host of tax laws do apply, but we have made special provisions in those tax laws that need to speak to the oil and gas sector.
Thank you so much, Godfrey, for breaking that down. Now, we, of course, whatever provisions we do have in the oil and gas sector from a tax perspective, we also do have in the mining and extractives perspective. And Felix is here, of course, to help us appreciate the tax provisions that are within the mining and extractive sector from a taxation perspective and from a legality perspective. If you can break it down for us.
Thank you very much. Just like it in the oil and gas sector, the mining is also a specialized sector. And as Godfrey said, it also takes time. From the time of prospecting, for example, and to the time of extracting the minerals, can take more than 20, 30 years, depending, and it is very, very capital intensive. So there are provisions that are provided in the law, and it's it's the same that Godfrey talked about. For sake of emphasis, Part 9A also applies for the specific provisions, specific issues of the mining. But then, of course, the general income tax area applies for the general issues of the law. Also, for the deeming bit of it, in the VAT, applies to the mining taxpayers as well. The incentives also that are given to the mining taxpayers, licensees, as far as the importation of the equipment and machineries are concerned, also apply to the mining taxpayers as well. So these provisions are apply to all the two sectors, but just a few things may differ, but they all get the specialized areas.
Thank you so much for that, Felix. We are still, of course, having this conversation pertaining to the oil and gas as well as the mining and extractive sectors. But now things are going to get a little bit more interesting, especially for the viewer who's out there, and they probably have designs on getting into these spaces. We shall start with the people who are very enthusiastic about getting into the oil and gas space. What are some of the tax incentives, because this is the gist of this show, that they should know about as they make designs of getting into this space?
Yeah, thank you so much, Solomon. And for me, I want to give also information before even go into the incentives and whatever, because you have to look at the gates that take you there.
Yes, the safeguards.
The safeguards. One, I would recommend everyone who wants to play in this space want to first get to register on the national supplier database, because you will not be able to be given a job or to be given a contract if you are not registered on the national supplier database. I think the requirements are not many. You need to be registered with a TIN. You acquire a tax identification number. Then you get a tax clearance from URA. Then you go to the Petroleum Authority of Uganda, put in your papers, apply, and then you get registered on the national supplier database. Because if you look at the laws they are emphasizing, and some of I've seen the regulation, is that for you to get a contract, first of all, you need to be registered on the national supplier database. There is also a talent register. Those of you who have talents that you think we have the skills that can be able to provide services in the oil and gas, you need to register on the talent register, because there is what they call local content. Probably that would be the first incentive that, aside from taxes, that the government has put in place, what they call the local content. Before the companies get the contracts, before they give out jobs, they need to first establish whether there is a company in Uganda, whether there is an individual in Uganda that can be able to provide such services. But how will they be able to know if you have not registered on the national supplier database? So that is very, very critical for our viewers there, that if you want to play in this space, register on the national supplier database. Also get to our talent register for provision of services. But also still talking about the local content. There are some of the services that have been ring-fenced for Ugandan companies. But these services, of course, you have to meet the standards, things like security, things like transport, like food, medical. Some of those services have been, I know the list is about 24. If you go onto the website of Petroleum Authority of Uganda and you type in local content services ring-fenced for Uganda, you see a host of those services that come through. So for me, I see the oil and gas is trying to think about what can the Ugandan company do to play in this space. And this probably will help us now on the side of URA. We should be able to see. We have been crying of expanding the tax base. Those are the ways how the tax base will be expanded, because if a whole company here gets a job, then that means they're going to look for more people to employ, and therefore the base will grow. But now, let's bring it to taxes. What are some of the tax incentives that we are looking at? Because as you have already noted, we are saying this sector is a unique sector, highly capitalized, high risk, but also high return, long gestation periods. And so how do we make sure that we entice foreign companies so that they are able to invest here. Because, like I told you, we need about 6 to 8 billion US dollars to be able to produce the oil.
That's a significant capital investment.
Yes. We need close to 3 to 4 billion US dollars to build the pipeline. The refinery will probably also cost something like 4 billion US dollars. So we are talking about capital investment close to 20 billion US dollars. That is a heavy investment, and the space we are talking about for these investments to come through is in a space of 3 to 4 years. A lot of investment. So where is this money coming from? Of course, we shall have the local companies play in the space, but much of it is likely to come from the oil companies, where these are multinationals coming from different tax jurisdictions, coming from other areas where there are prospects of oil and gas. There is oil and gas in Ghana, there is in Nigeria, there is many countries now are coming up with are discovering oil and gas. So we are all competing for these guys to come and be able to partner with them and produce oil and gas. So we have to look at what kind of incentives that can we give to be able to attract investment. One of them that has been given is an exemption on import duty. The East African Customs Management Act exempts inputs and equipment used for exclusive use in the oil and gas from import duties. That is one of the biggest incentives that has been given. You can imagine a rig. One rig can cost close to 12 million US dollars, one rig. So if we are to get import duties on the rig, or if we are to get whatever VAT on the rig, really it will be very hard.
It will be a significant contribution to the revenue target.
Yeah, as URA we can get the revenues, but how many rigs are there in this world?
Very few.
There are very few rigs. So if Uganda we are levying taxes, import duties on the rig, there is another country that needs the rig. And for them, they will do their whatever. What is important is to get.
We would be eating the egg.
Yes, is to get the oil out of the ground, but we need to look at the big picture. So, exempt some of these items. Make sure the rig comes, the input come without charging the import duties. But what we are targeting is to make sure that the oil comes out of the ground. That's where the value lies. Okay. You are aware. Just moderator, if you can allow me, you are aware. Just a few seconds, I will be done with this. If you are aware, we have a withholding tax regime, where if a non-resident service provider provides you services, we are required under the Ugandan laws to withhold as part of their income tax.
I want to interject.
Yes.
Someone is watching and they want to understand who a non-resident service provider is.
A non-resident,
so that they understand this fully.
Yes, a non-resident service provider is a service provider who ideally is not a resident person in Uganda.
By way of tax laws.
Yeah, is not a resident individual. Is not a resident individual, meaning that is not a Ugandan individual, or is not a resident company which is registered in Uganda. So we are looking at individuals and companies basically outside Uganda. And these are the ones that are providing services. For example, if we talk about services, some of them might sound unique. If we talk of mud logging as a service provided in the oil and gas, who of us know mud logging? If we're talking about rig services, how many Ugandans have rigs? If we talk about wirelining services, those wires that go, for your information and to our viewers, that this oil, when we talk of getting oil, we're talking about getting oil about 3 kilometers deep in the ground. 3 kilometers deep. So that means you need to have a service provider that is telling us how 3 kilometers deep in the ground, how is it performing? Are you meeting some substances that can hinder the integrity of what you are doing? Can it cause havoc to the surface. When it comes out, all those services. So those services are being provided by foreigners. When we are paying them, or when someone paying them is supposed to withhold. Now we have said, for us to attract those services to come, let's look for a smaller withholding tax. We are charging 10% as compared to the 15% that is charged on other services. Okay. By the way, for the pipeline, it has even been made more cheaper, 5%. 5%. Because
that's 10% off.
Yes, 10% off. Why? Because our crude is useless without taking it to the market. Actually, if you get it and put it in the drums, like we have it, during the testing, we were able to get some test crude, some good barrels of oil. They are there in our butainers. But that oil, if they gave it to you, really, you have no value. So this crude gets value when it is able to go to the coast, it is taken to the refinery, that's when there is value. So we needed to incentivize the pipeline. So the people providing the services, they are saying this is the marginal project, very small profits. Therefore, if you now charging high income tax to the service providers, therefore
it doesn't make business sense.
Make business thrive. I talked about deemed VAT.
Yes.
And moderator, you asked me to throw more light.
I want you to dig deep into deemed VAT.
Throw more light on it. Deemed VAT, this thing started way back July 2015. When the companies petitioned, not petitioned, but at least went to the Minister of Finance and said, and of course after the President had said for long that we shouldn't tax investment. If a company is investing, should not be paying VAT, because VAT, me and you know that it is a consumption tax. That means you should be consuming. Now, if you are investing, there shouldn't be VAT. So in 2015, July, a team of, I think, URA staff, I know our AC was part of that team, people from the ministry and whatever, came up with an idea of deemed VAT. Now, deemed VAT means that you issue an invoice to a company, you charge you indicate VAT, but the company will not be able to pay the VAT to you, and therefore you are also not required to remit that VAT to URA. How does this one help? It means the company, the oil company, which is paying you the VAT, the cash flow burden will have been lessened. Reduced, yes. Lessened. But you, the company that is providing the service, who is the contractor now, URA does not also ask you to remit that money to URA. So we are now freeing some money. We are freeing some money. I remember
there would be VAT expenses.
There would be
let up.
There would be VAT expenses now lessened, and the companies are able to stay with that money to do more investments. I remember that time when we still had we had not changed. The companies had accumulated. We did some audits of these ones. They had accumulated close to 100 billion. 100 billion in VAT that was paid to the government, and the companies were saying we refund. The government had used that money. So we are saying, why don't we free this money so the company can be able to invest? Okay. Just the incentives are many.
Please take your time.
But
the incentives are the gist of this show.
The one thing I cannot live without talking about is the cash refunds, VAT cash refunds. URA management and the Ministry of Finance has made a decision that the oil and gas sector is going to be a priority as far as cash refunds is concerned. And in fact, the refunds desk for the oil and gas has been put aside. It is being managed under the Petroleum division. It is separate from the general refunds, so that we are able to expedite the process of refunds. And we have given ourselves service level agreements that if you submit your refund today, URA ideally should have paid you within 30 days. That one should be paid out. But we are looking at the way how we can even make it reduce further. Some ideas were coming through that since these contractors are going to be habitual or continuous refund claimants, why don't we look at a mechanism of making it easier? For example, if someone has been audited 1, 2, 3, 5 times in terms of their refunds and there are no issues, why don't we channel them, let's say a green channel? Immediately you put in your refund, we take it for payment, we can do reviews. So, but what are you trying to do here is to make sure that the players in the oil and gas will release their cash flow. Modulate another incentive probably, and our viewers would be interested in would be the VAT on imported services. This one was also, so to speak, removed because any company in Uganda that is dealing in other sectors, if you import a service, you are actually supposed to pay VAT at importation of those services at 18%. For oil and gas, and also for my colleague in mining, we have said because of the challenges and the issues in these sectors, let those services be like a zero-sum game. You import, you are charged VAT, but you are also allowed to claim a credit of this VAT in your return. At the end of the day, it becomes a zero-sum game. Therefore, there is no VAT that you need to pay on imported services. Of course, why? Because these services, like I told you, the ones I was mentioning, rigging services, wire lining, all those services required, they are not there in this country. Even in mining, there are a number of services that we need to get outside Uganda. So these ones have to be imported. But how do you make sure that you incentivize this industry? We have said, charge the VAT, claim it back, becomes a zero-sum game, and then we release your cash flow. Now, other things, of course, are provided in the law, like we have capped some of the losses have been capped. We have given accelerated capital deductions which is not available in other sectors. If you have invested capital items, we are giving you accelerated capital deductions. When you look
for the benefit of my uncle, who is not so heavy in tax knowledge, when you say those terminologies, exactly what do you mean? Paint a picture for him.
Yeah. Let me give an example of someone. Now we are in the oil and gas. If you import, let's say, a bulldozer or an excavator, because in the oil and gas you are digging access roads, you are excavating some material. These caterpillars, we are saying this caterpillar can be actually, for example, in the oil and gas, if you import it during exploration phase and it be used during exploration phase, we are saying this caterpillar can be, the whole of it, expensed in that year. In other sectors, like in road construction and other whatever, they will be allowed to expense this caterpillar in portions for like 5 years. For oil and gas, we are saying expense it. Why? You are making money, so we want you to recover
as much as you can,
your capital very fast. That's what I mean by accelerated capital deductions. Now, when I cannot, I have talked about also the pipeline, because the pipeline this
it's
time
very strategic.
Is strategic, and we are saying as Uganda it is a utility pipeline. Oil has to go. If it is not going, we have no value in the oil, because this is an integrated project. The companies have been given, the pipeline company has been given a 10-year income tax exemption. Yes, we are saying, how do we attract investment? This money could have gone somewhere else. So we give you an exemption, 10-year exemption. I've also talked about the reduced withholding tax rates. Now, for deemed VAT, actually for the pipeline, it has been taken a notch higher. You know, we have
how high?
We have the pipeline company. Then we have the people who provide services and goods, the pipeline company. But there are also those who provide services and goods to those that provide services to the pipeline. So
company.
I can call it, there is a pipeline company, there is a contractor who is providing services to the pipeline company, but there is also a subcontractor behind. Now all those ones for the pipeline have been given deemed VAT. So this time we shall be dealing more, refunding more of the tier 2, the subcontractors are the ones we have now planned for the VAT refunds. But between the pipeline company and the contractors there, we have released their cash flow for using the VAT deeming provision. There is an issue which I don't know whether it will come through, but asking how is the VAT at exemption at importation, I mean the customs exemption, going to be administered? And when you look at the East African Customs Management Act, it was saying that that license, that exemption is only available to licensees. Licensees here, I mean the companies that are having government contracts to produce oil and gas, which are the big oil companies, the Totals, the Sinox, the Amas of whatever. But we have gotten a guideline from the Attorney General, and in his guidance he said actually the activities, the companies that do the work in the oil and gas are not the oil company. It is the service providers. It is the contractors, the service and the subcontractors who actually do the work. And the Attorney General has guided that now that exemption should extend to the contractors and subcontractors. What is pending now from the guidance was that the Commissioner, Uganda Revenue Authority, will have to come up with the controls that have to be put in place to make sure that this exemption is not abused. So that question has been coming up in the meetings I've been attending. They have asked me that question. If there is someone who is watching, now I'm giving an answer that yes, the contractor and subcontractors have an exemption at importation, but we are only waiting for the Commissioner to guide on the controls, that all the procedures that have to be undertaken, so that we are able to see that this exemption is not abused. And I hope it will come out soon.
Thank you so much for that powerful submission about the incentives that are available in the oil and gas space. Anyone who has designs on getting into that space, this discussion started with the duty for them to get registered on the 2 platforms that are being governed by the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. So if you have talent and you want to go and optimize it in the oil and gas space, you know what you need to do. You need to register yourself on their portal. Then if you also are a company that has designs on playing in that space, there are some obligations that you must fulfill, 2 of which are getting registered with Uganda Revenue Authority and acquiring a TIN, and fulfilling the obligations that come with a TIN holder in order to qualify for a TCC. Then you can go ahead and you apply to also get entered on the local content platform. Aside from that, we do have Felix in the room, and he has been quiet for a bit, but he's here to also break down the tax incentives that are within the mining and the extractive sector. What are these incentives? Take it away, Felix.
Thank you very much, moderator. Maybe before I talk about the incentives, it's important to talk about the obligation that lie before a licensee. Okay, because if you come to the Commissioner General and ask for these incentives that are provided by the law, the Commissioner General will ask you if you meet the other obligations that the tax law requires. Let me put this basing on the different licenses that are in the mining sector. One is for a licensee holding what is called a prospecting license. As I talked earlier, I say the prospecting license is given to a taxpayer or someone interested in investing in the mining industry to go out there and scan around and see what kind of minerals are there so that they can come and start finding the more details. So a prospecting licensee is expected that they have a TIN. And I know our viewers could probably be aware, they are aware that the law provides that no license shall be given either by a private authority or government authority to anyone who does not possess a TIN. So the first requirement is that you must have a taxpayer identification number. And if you go to the Department of Geological Surveys and Mines in Entebbe to ask to be given a license to prospect, one of the requirements they will ask you is to present a taxpayer identification number. Now, when you have a taxpayer identification number, of course, you will be required to be registered for certain tax types. For a prospecting licensee, definitely we expect that there is not much activities. You are just prospecting, scanning around. So if the prospecting involves having employees, then definitely we shall require that you are registered for payee taxed. But also the other thing is the law provides, the Income Tax Act provides that a licensee is a designated withholding agent. In July, our viewers are aware that the government designated withholding tax agents to a tune of about maybe 10,000. Now, for the sector of mining and these extractives, even if you're not on that list, but the moment you've been issued with a license, then you become a designated withholding agent. And therefore, if you're making payments for the services or goods that have been supplied to you, then you're expected to withhold and remit to URA. Secondly, is on the exploration license. When you go now, as you go from prospecting, you go into exploration, then you need to go deeper. You go into establishing how much of these minerals are available, is it worth investing in them? So meaning the activities are increasing. When the activities are increasing, meaning probably there are services, more service providers, there are also employees that you have, but therefore you expect at that point, assuming at the prospecting level you do not for example, qualify to register for payee, at that point you are definitely required to register for pay as you earn. The third one is, of course, even for exploration licensee, the other thing that maybe I'll come into is the registration for VAT. Ordinarily, in a general sense, for you want to be registered for VAT, they must meet certain conditions, especially if it is a compulsory registration. They must be dealing in what is called taxable sales, meaning they must have sales. Secondly, they must be above the threshold of sales of 150 million in a year, and that is measured in terms of a quarter, 37.5 million, for it to be registered. Now, for a licensee for the mining sector, that provision may be waived. So that means the taxpayer who is in this sector can actually register for pay, even when they are not in producing and making, earning any income. They can be registered for pay so that they can be able to claim some of the inputs that they have incurred in the course of the mining operations. Godfrey talked about the refunds. That is when that money should be refunded to you. The other one, of course, we don't expect that an exploration licensee should pay income tax. But then they incur costs. in terms, we say the heavy investments that they involve, the incur expenses, if they have employees and so on. So they of course expected that they have income tax so that they can be able to declare some of these costs in their returns. The other one is the mining lease. Currently, the mining lease. I know the new mineral and mining license 2021 has kind of altered the current licensing arrangement and provided for a new regime, which they call small scale licenses, large scale licenses, and medium scale licenses. And that is determined depending on how much you invest. But they currently will have what is called the mining lease. Now, mining leases are issued to people who are investing certain amounts of capital. Then we have mining lease and the locational lease. Both grant the licensee the permission to extract the minerals. The difference is that for mining lease is what I would call a large scale and medium scale. For location lease is what is called small scale. You're allowed to use simple tools to be able to extract the minerals. Whereas the other side, you're going to bring excavators, you're going to bring all these sophisticated machineries, build the tunnels to be able to remove the minerals from underground. So when the moment you have a mining lease or a location license, then you're at the point of extraction. When you're at the point of extraction, we expect that you're going to earn income. So an obligation that falls for someone who holds a mining lease or a location license is that they must be having income tax, they must declare income. Secondly, definitely there should be employees at that point. No one is going to do business at that scale without employees. So they must be registered, declaring and paying pay. Then minerals, all the minerals that are extracted in Uganda are standard rated. Except if you have by year of VAT, yes, by year of VAT. So 18%. Then 18%. So then we expect that you're registered for VAT and declaring that VAT and paying it to Uganda Revenue Authority. So those, I wanted to bring those obligations before I come into the issues of the incentives, because then it will inform whether you will benefit from these incentives or not. Now, when we come to the incentives, Godfrey talked about the accelerated depreciation.
Yes.
Now, maybe the other thing that I want to emphasize is in mining is that what we call ring fence. A mining licensee can ordinarily hold more than one license. Now, if you're going to declare costs that are incurred, they should be in relation to the income that is made in a certain license area. That means if the whole income, the whole cost was incurred in a certain licensed area, you should be able to claim the entire cost. However, if it is shared, then you should apportion it basing on the operation, the income that you've earned.
Felix, you're still speaking French. If you can simplify it a bit more for...
Now, ring fencing...
For Ombaria, he's watching.
For ring fencing, I said a licensee can hold more than one license.
Yes.
Let's give an example of a mining lease holder.
Okay.
Holds a lease, a mining lease, one for extraction of gold in Busia,
yes,
and probably has another extra lease for extraction of gold in Kasanda, Mubende. Now, if he has brought in an excavator, that is a cost. This excavator is supposed to be depreciated.
Yes.
Now, if he's using the excavator in Busia
and not in Kasanda,
and also in Kasanda, then that's so-called you apportion. The income should be, you should clearly state that this, declare this income is in relation to this license and this cost is in relation to this license. That's what I'm calling.
You need to be categorical.
You need to be categorical. The essence is, you know, in this industry being a specialized industry, there are, of course, investors who would go into, you have an expression license. For example, I can say this categorically. There are people with more than 5 licenses.
They're operating in different places.
One license is mining lease. They are mining, earning income, while the other 4 are exploration licenses, meaning there are no income yet earned. Now, all these licenses have heavy capital investments. So you'll find that in more than 50 years, someone may not pay tax. You see?
By way of,
by the way of bringing, yes, they keep on exploring and bring machineries that eat into the income that is earned from this license. So the law requires that is ring-fenced. You claim what is in respect to a certain license area. I just wanted to add on the bit of accelerated depreciation.
Even for Mario.
Yes. Yes, Godfrey talked about the 10%, the 20% for non-resident service providers. I think that was very clear. It applies to mining licenses as well. The other bit is on when I come to VAT. I talked about a licensee being allowed to register for VAT even when they are not earning income yet. Even when they're not earning income yet. Or if income can come maybe in 10 years, but they can be registered for VAT now. That's the other incentive that they have, so that they can be able to claim some of those costs. Of course, there's dimming. Dimming VAT, Godfrey explained it.
Yes, dimming exists even this side.
Exactly. But maybe the other bit that I will talk about is the law has some exceptions in terms of what the dimming is. And the exceptions are that if you incur input costs in what they call entertainment, and then repair of passenger motor vehicles, purchase and repair of passenger motor vehicles, those costs are not supposed to be deemed. So you're supposed to pay taxes on them. But otherwise, anything that is not a passenger automobile and its repair, or is not incurred in entertainment, is deemed paid by the licensee. The other bit is I talked about the taxpayer having declaring pay as you earn. But you know, if this pay as you earn is verified by you, it's a cost that is allowable to reduce the chargeable income from the income that you're supposed to declare. So
at
it's
income tax level.
At income tax level. So that is there, but what is important, that's why I started with the obligation, is that you must meet the obligations for you to be able to benefit from these incentives. There's other thing maybe that I can add is on what they call VAT deferral at importation for this extractive sector. That you can apply to the commissioner for the VAT that you should have incurred at the importation of plant and equipment for use in production of income, especially in this extractive sector, to be deferred. Meaning you are going to bring in equipment and not pay VAT at importation, and use those equipments to make income. And as long as those equipments are used to make the income, then the VAT, you will pay the VAT eventually from there. But the VAT on importation would eventually not be paid. But for a taxpayer who fails to use the imported plant and machinery on for the purpose on which they applied, they could bring it and put it there without it making income, or they could sell it. Then URA will walk in to ask for you to pay the VAT component. The other bit is the God we talked about exemption on plant and machinery applies to mining. There's exemption. There is on import of motor vehicles of more than 5 tons. Transport motor vehicles of more than 5 tons, but below 20 tons, the import duty is 10%. If it is more than 20 tons, it is 0. If it is a tractor head for use in the mining industry, it is also 10%. So these are some, and maybe the other bit is for the benefit of our viewers. You know, we come from the Petroleum and Mining Division. The reason why this division was formed was for the taxpayers to be able to get there's a dedicated team that has been put together that support them. So I would also call this incentive, that people understand these very specifics of the industry of mining and petroleum. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Felix, for breaking down the incentives in that space. I think the incentives are now as clear as night and day for anyone who would like to take part in those specific sectors, but so are the responsibilities.
Yes, please.
I like the fact that the responsibilities, and all these 6 questions have come from one individual, and they are all accruing to...
Before you go to questions, allow me say something small, because people have been wondering in the oil and gas, how are we going to make
the money? Now, Godfrey, you might find that the questions here are actually speaking to that. Because all of them are in the oil and gas space, fortunately. And they are coming from one individual, and I know for a fact that one of the questions is speaking to that. So you will have an opportunity to really break down that, but also to attend to these questions. I know some of them you've already made mention of some of the elements, but just maybe to give clarity. And they're coming from Musoke Lamek. And the very first question that he's asking is, what are pre-first oil tax and non-revenue in relation to upstream, pipeline / ECOP, and refinery? Are they calculated / assessed as other taxes from other sectors? That was his very first question. The second question is, what is going to be the basis for taxation, for example, upstream segment? Assumed figure versus actual figures. He's asking, is it going to be assumed figures or actual figures? That is question number 2. Now, you do realize that you actually made some mention on some elements that are even within these very first 2 questions. Question 3 is, explain the different taxes payable by the different companies along the oil value chain: upstream, pipeline, midstream, and refinery or downstream, and how much is expected from each segment. Question number 4 is, how equipped is URA to tax the oil / petroleum sector? Remember, the companies involved have been in the game for decades. Any trainings in that regard? Question 5 is, where will URA get the actual oil volumes onto which taxes are going to be levied? Is it from the companies by way of declarations, say CNOC, Total, or UNOC, or will URA deploy its staff at these oil storage facilities? Very important question. And question 6 is, any disclosure agreements between URA and the parties, companies involved in the petroleum value chain? Those are his questions. 6 questions, and I think those will be the questions that we shall take for the day.
Sorry, I did not capture his name.
He's called Musoke Lamek. Certainly a deep level tax player, really.
Yeah, thank you so
Going
much.
by the question.
Thank you so much, Musoke Lamek, for these wonderful questions. These ones actually indicate to me that we have oil and gas experts there. Yes, we do. And people are interested in this sector. You can see the breadth and the depth of the questions that they are sitting in.
Yeah.
To show that they are really interested in what this oil and gas sector is likely to offer. The first question was talking about pre-first oil taxes.
Yes.
When we talk of pre, it means before first oil. In these sectors, whether pipeline, whether refinery. Now, what we should appreciate as Ugandans is that these companies, when they come here and they register with URA, first of all, they are taxpayers.
Yes, they are.
They are taxpayers, and
most have actually been for ages.
Yes, they are taxpayers, and therefore there are some taxes that they have to pay. For example, we are aware that if you have employees, they will have to definitely pay as you earn.
True.
If you are incurring expenses and you are consuming goods and services, first of all, like oil and gas companies, they are by law designated withholding tax agents. So they are required to withhold for the services and the goods that they consume from the service providers if those service providers are not exempt. So therefore, we are seeing this withholding tax coming through. Withholding tax, I think everyone knows that these are the taxes withheld from the services provided as part of your advance tax to you who is providing the services. So we are already collecting this money. But then I talked about withholding tax on foreign services. So those are normal taxes that every taxpayer pays. And it is our mandate to make sure that money also comes to the government. But specifically to the oil and gas, we have been able to see some revenues come through. Are they called other taxes? Are they called what? Now, the Public Finance Management Act of 2015 actually came out clearly and defined what are the petroleum revenues. And this is why I wanted to come in. Please. When you said it rhymes in very well with this question. There is the Public Finance Management Act 2015 came clearly to define what we know as petroleum revenues. Petroleum revenues include the following: bonuses, signature bonus. One of the pre-first oil is the signature bonus. When the companies sign the contract, the PSA, before they are awarded a license, there is that money that comes in. It is called a petroleum revenue. It's not a non-tax revenue. I will not call it non-tax revenue because the Public Finance Management Act has said it is a petroleum revenue. So those are some of the pre-revenues that are coming through. We have things like education levy. Companies in the oil and gas space, they have an obligation to contribute money towards the training. He was talking about training, training of the manpower, the government officials that are going to
play in the space.
Play in this space. I'm already a beneficiary of that training.
Lamek is engaging with a trained.
So I'm already a beneficiary. So if you are asking what is the URA's capacity and whatever, and how are they building the capacity, I'm already a beneficiary. And URA, we have made sure that at least every year we have someone who is going for these trainings in UK mostly, so that people are. We have many of the staff, I think, in the sector, about now 8 in the petroleum division, have masters in the oil and gas, in economics, in accounting, in law. So we are now building capacity. And the capacity is also built everywhere because we are working with other agencies, Petroleum Authority of Uganda, the National Oil Company, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Energy. We are working as a team. We cannot work in silo. So in terms of pre-first oil revenues, I've talked about signature bonuses. There is that education bonus. There is that training levy. There is also surface rentals. Surface rentals is the amount of revenue that you pay because of the surface area you hold. And that one is paid from exploration phase, even during production it is paid. So the government is already realizing revenue which have been deposited on the petroleum fund. So we already have petroleum revenues on the petroleum fund, and it is coming even before the first oil.
Someone would be interested in knowing how much has come in so far. Estimate.
Okay, fine. When I was the last time I checked on the figures, I can say what we have collected. Yes, we have collected in this sector. We are about above 3 trillion. When I look at the figures,
and this is all pre-oil.
All these revenues have been collected before oil, about 3 trillion from about 10 years ago. That's you can see that this revenue that's about 25% or 20% of URA's annual collection. So, yes. But you can see how many players have we been talking about? How many oil companies have we been talking about? Probably there are like 4. There are like 4 and a few 12, 13, 15 contractors who have been able to collect this amount of revenues. And another source of revenue, I talked about surface rentals. Those are some of the pre-first oil revenues. Now, the basis of taxation for our oil. Yes, we are saying that we have to come up with a valuation mechanism. How are we going to value oil? Because taxation of oil is a very simple thing. It is how do you get revenue? First of all, revenue is a product of the quantity times the price. Now, prices change in the market. Today they are high, tomorrow they are low. There are issues of related party transactions where the prices can be suppressed for purposes of shifting away money from Uganda. So we are discussing with the Ministry of Finance under the Income Tax Act. There is a provision that the minister will issue regulations for purposes of valuing our crude. So this crude will have to be valued. The Minister of Finance will provide us a valuation mechanism to give us a price that is going to be used for purposes of determining the value of crude that is produced. And this one, I want also to bring it with the question on what? Where will the volumes be determined? There is a physical meter which is going to be staged in Kabale, where before the oil will go into the export pipeline. So because we have to determine taxes at different stages in the value chain, and this question he has also asked it. So we have a fiscal meter, and this meter is going to be regulated or monitored by the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. I think other discussions that we are going to have is that should we have a domestic tax officer at the fiscal meter? Should we have a customs officer at the fiscal meter, so that as the fiscal meter is calibrating and measuring, we are also taking some notes and records. I recently have been to Angola. Angola, they have a customs office at the export point, and the customs officer is taking those records and relaying, putting it on the system, so that even someone at the domestic taxes is getting real time. So I think this is some of the things I've seen. We need to have even a customs officer at the physical meter, or even a customs officer at the export meter in Tanga, so that we are able to get this information for purposes of determining the volumes. The only way we can lose it here is if we are unable to get the real-time information on the volumes. So, yeah, how do we determine taxes at different stages? Yes, I did not talk about the value chain. The oil and gas is a value chain. Like I talked about upstream, there is midstream, there is downstream. Downstream being the petrol stations we see. But when we talk of oil and gas, mainly we are focusing on the upstream, the exploration, development and production of that oil, crude oil, and the transportation and the refinery of that oil. And these value chains have, he talked of a principle of ring fencing, I can use that word. These value chains are taxed differently. And you see, for the upstream, the viewers should know how are we going to make money in the upstream. Upstream, if we get the barrel of crude oil, a barrel of crude oil is some 150 something liters of oil, probably 3 jerrycans, about 5 jerrycans to speak, or 6. Now, when this oil comes out of the ground, assume we have those 1 barrel of oil, the government will straight away start getting revenue, because there is a percentage which is called royalty. So 15, or 17, 12%, depending on what was agreed out of that barrel is going to be part of the government revenue. So the first barrel that comes out of the ground, the government is already getting the revenue. Now, the oil that remains after removing the royalty part of it is going to be used to pay back the oil companies, what we call cost oil, cost recovery. So a portion of it now goes back to the company to pay for their costs. Now, there is a portion that remains. Now that portion is called profit oil. Now, that profit oil is to be shared between the company and the government. So you can see the government has already gotten a portion in form of royalty. Now down here, it is also getting a portion in form of profit oil. So you can see how the government's envelope in terms of whatever of revenues is increasing. Now, when this company takes the cost oil and takes the profit oil, then now we also subject it to income tax. We now subject it to the income tax using the income tax rules.
Because an income has been made?
Yes, they have made an income, so they have to pay tax. Then the government also gets income tax. If you look at that, we think that in terms of what the government take, in terms of that barrel of oil that comes out of the ground, the government should be able to take something like above 70% of the oil. So you can see that this project, when we are talking about incentives, when we are talking about what the biggest beneficiary in this project is the citizen of Uganda, because if we get these revenues, then we can be able to use it for the prescribed basic and strategic sectors, education, infrastructure, name it. Now, he also asked about the capacity.
Readiness.
Readiness. The Petroleum and Mining Division started way back, I think in 2009. It was called the Natural Resource Management Unit. I think I'm part of the few pioneers of that unit, having joined around 2012. And I went for my master's training in 2016. We have other guys who have trained. So, and from all this, from 2009, we've been preparing ourselves. We've been training. We've been looking at the audits of these companies. We have recorded very substantial amounts from their audits. High revenues were recovered. We have audited them when they are doing exploration. We are auditing them when they are doing development. So we are understanding their operations. Recently, I'm aware URA has recruited some engineers. Some of these have bias. They are biased in those areas. Petroleum engineering, petroleum what? About 10 of them are coming to join us very soon. So all this is and we have said now, for us not to get lost into other operations, we have come up with a whole division, which is headed by the Assistant Commissioner, who has also done these studies. I am aware she's very technical in these areas, to make sure that we are able to develop capacity to be able to manage this sector. And we don't work alone. We have signed an MOU with the Auditor General, who does the cost recovery audits of these companies. We have signed an MOU with the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. We have signed an MOU with the Uganda National Oil Company. Other MOUs are yet to be signed, but you can see with the key strategic partners we are working with them are already on board in terms of information sharing. I told you when we came from Angola, we are now looking at developing a system, a module that can be able to capture returns, capture real-time information from the fiscal meter. We can be able to exchange data, Petroleum Authority of Uganda, Uganda National Oil Company, so that we also build a capacity, because what I have seen in this sector, it is all depends on how much amount of data do you have. Are you getting it in real time? And of course, these revenues are big. You don't need to wait for another day before they collect, knowing where the revenues are and collecting them. So I think I've been able to answer these questions, we are there. We are getting there.
Thank you so much, Godfrey, for that submission. It's exactly 52 minutes past midday and time is well spent. I know the conversation doesn't end here. We shall probably be having more of such dialogues because the content, as you have seen, is too rich to be fully summed up in only one session. I think viewers should expect more of the same. We shall have deeper discussions about taxation and these two very key sectors that are going to take the country forward. But please allow me to appreciate our panelists who have taken a good chunk of their time to come here and share with us, share with the country these insights into the incentives as well as the taxation, the way these two sectors are taxed. We do appreciate profoundly, and we do hope that the next time that you're given an invitation, you certainly come through and share this information with us. From all of us at URA TV to all of you, the viewers, adios.
Be it known to me, she is a business owner that has just received a tax assessment from URA for not filing her tax return. She goes to her neighbor Nalongo to vent.
Nalongo, I'm frustrated. Can you imagine URA has issued me with a tax assessment simply because I did not file my tax return?
Oh no. To avoid such assessments, I file my tax return by the due date.
Due date? You mean there are deadlines for filing return?
Yes, they are there. And failure to file your tax return by the due date leads to URA issuing you a tax assessment.
But the amount of tax assessed does not even reflect my business performance. Why didn't URA first ask my business performance before assessing me?
You see, Nantome, URA gives you the opportunity to assess yourself by filing a return. If you fail to file your return by the due date, that is when URA comes in to issue you with a tax assessment.
Tell me more.
For income tax and rental income tax, both a provisional and a final tax return must be filed. For a provisional tax return, the due date is by the end of the 6th month of the taxpayer's year of income for a non-individual and by the end of the 3rd month of the taxpayer's year of income for an individual. For a final tax return, the due date is by the end of the 6th month after the taxpayer's year of income for both individuals and non-individuals. For VAT, excise duty, withholding tax, and pay-as-you-earn returns, the due date is by the 15th day after the end of the tax period to which the return relates. For a lotteries and gaming return, the due date is every Wednesday of the following week